Thanks, Clay. The last topic is going to be nuts. Not using the steps, not using the sponsor with Jack M from St. Uncle, Scottsdale.
Hey guys, I'm Jack. I'm an addict. I want to thank Phil for asking me to do this. I'd like to say, first off, how grateful I am to be here because this is the second time today I've seen a group of addicts gathered in one place seeking a solution, and the other was a methadone clinic, man, and without the steps and without my sponsor, maybe I'd be stopping at that one. But get right into it. I mean, the steps are just the meat and potatoes of this fellowship, man. I mean, that's what Narcotics Anonymous is. That's what recovery is. I mean, as you can tell, I like meat and potatoes, man. It works for me, man. It's like, if I'm not here to work steps and I'm not here to work with a sponsor, then I'm just here to hang out and drink some coffee and shit till I use again. And that's my experience because I've done that. I have experience working with a sponsor, working steps. And I have experience not doing that. And I don't know, man. I came around a long time and tried to pick and choose what I could do. I would get a sponsor so I could raise my hand when they asked who had a sponsor, so I wasn't the guy sitting there with my hand down. But I would never call, I would never talk to him. If I did, I would never share anything that was going on. Man, and it always got me back out there. I always got me back out there. Always got me high again. And even since I got clean, I've been clean a little over 2 years now, and it's I have experience not working with my sponsor in this clean time and not working steps. Since I've been clean, the first year and a half, maybe 20 months, man, everything seemed so great. I was talking to my sponsor all the time. I was getting into step work. I was really trying to practice spiritual principles in my life. My life got better every day. There's no promises in here what my life is going to be. It's the promise is, freedom from active addiction, and I've gotten so much more than that. But that's all bonus stuff. You know what I mean? That's all after the fact stuff. But a few months ago, I finished writing on a step, and I talked to my sponsor about it. And he had some other things he wanted me to do. Well, talk to some other people and do some things, before I could move on in step work. So I started doing that, and I ran into a snag where this dude wouldn't call me back, right? The guy he wanted me to talk to wouldn't call me back. So instead of even telling my sponsor or seeking a solution with that, my old way of thinking, I started building up this resentment, like, oh, now they're going to stop me from fucking working steps. Like, started blaming other people for what was going on in my life, started finding problems everywhere instead of moving forward, so... And I went for 3 or 4 months. I would tell certain people about it, but I would probably give more my side of the story than what was really going on. Just because I wasn't working steps and I wasn't working with my sponsor, my old way of thinking comes right back. You know what I mean? So I just start wanting to point fingers, and I just want to all poor me and self-pity and all that bullshit. I got into that quick, man, and I stayed in it for a little while, and I'll tell you, I had a miserable freaking summer. And it's all my own doing, man. Nobody did it to me. I didn't use, thank God I didn't use. But it was a miserable summer because I would not get out of my own way and look for a solution. So I talked to somebody that I respected in this fellowship, and he said, well, man, call your sponsor. Just tell him you can't get a hold of the guy won't call you back. So I'm like, I'm build this big build up in my mind. I don't want to call him. I don't want to get into this because we're going to have this argument, or he's just going to tell me to call the guy again. So I called my sponsor, and I said, look, man, I've been trying. I called this guy a few times, and immediate words were out of his mouth were, well, fuck him, call this guy. So I, stewed all summer over that fucking sentence. You know what I mean? I was, losing my mind, and all I had to do was tell him, and he just gave me another solution. And that's the value of a sponsor. That's why I go insane not working with a sponsor, because, like I said, I was going nuts, and all I had to do was tell him what was going on, and he presents me another solution. But, that's me, hard-headed, man. I like to learn lessons the hard way. Through this process, I hope I don't have to do that as often as I do, but it is what it is, man. I'm still here. Let's start with the steps, too. Step work and sponsorship go hand in hand, but there's 2 sentences on there, not working steps and not working with a sponsor, so I guess I'll try to address them both. Excuse me. Yeah, my mind just went blank. And my sponsor tells me it's because I have a hard time being honest. But If I was trying to bullshit you, I'd be able to talk a million miles an hour up here, man. But being honest, I got to think about what I'm saying. Yeah, it really did go blank. Oh, yeah, steps. Thinking about that, right? Steps are the directions. You know, I remember when I was using, I remember a bunch of times, and I think Tim talked about it, you know, asking why. I remember, like, going to bad neighborhoods, going to cop dope, going to steal shit. I would have tears in my eyes, and I would be, like, looking in the mirror driving, like, why can't I stop? Why can't I stop doing this stuff? Because I didn't like myself. I hated what I was doing. And I was always asking myself why, and I could never get an answer because I was never looking in the right place. The steps gave me the answers to that. But it didn't tell me why I couldn't stop. It tells me how to stop. You know, it starts addressing the things that are inherently wrong with me. You know, it makes me do this self-assessment instead of me pointing the blame everywhere else and trying to make it somebody else's fault, why my life isn't the way I want it to be. You know, why I always have this bad luck, that, you know, the shit always happens to me. And, you know, the truth is the steps have shown me that I caused all this shit. You know, the pain I go through, man, I bring on myself. I ask for it. I invite it in the door. And when I invite pain in, it's going to kick me. It's going to beat me down. You know, that's just what happens. But I don't know. Like I said, man, I don't really know where to go with that because to me it's a simple statement. You know, nuts not using this stuff. You know, today I understand that because I don't have to analyze everything and I don't have to ask why. Somebody in NA tells me it's crazy not to do it. I believe them. Nobody in here has ever steered me wrong. You know, the only person that gets in my way and takes me down the wrong path is myself. You know, I've learned through this step work to take some responsibility for the things that go on in my life, like the wrongs I do, the mistakes I make. So that means anything I tell you that makes sense here came from Narcotics Anonymous. Anything I tell you that's wrong came out of my head. That's pretty much how my life works, man. And I do that a lot. You know, I get in the way. Surrender into these principles that I learned in the steps every day is not something I remember to do every day. You know, sometimes I get up in the morning and I'm in a hurry, and usually those are the worst days I have. Because when I'm in the middle of something, I can't figure out how to get out of it. It's not till later when I do that inventory that I learned in the steps, and I look back at myself and I reflect on my day that I can figure out where I went wrong. And it's usually first thing in the morning, not doing what my sponsor said, by hitting my knees, surrendering to this disease, you know, getting some acceptance and going about things the right way. You know, when I don't do that, I try to run my life. I try to control my days. I start thinking everybody owes me something, everybody should do things my way. And that's not the way it is, you know. And that's something I've learned through this process, through the step work process. You know, for me, I feel I have the greatest sponsor in the world. I would say if you have a sponsor and you don't feel that way, maybe you need a new one. Everybody should feel that way about their sponsor. You know, I met the guy, I saw the way he was living. Not what he was saying inside the room, but how he was living outside the room, and that's what really attracted to me. You know, he wasn't being a hypocrite. He wasn't full of shit. I mean, he would say something, then I would see him outside, and he would be doing what he said. Not like me, where I would come in here when I wasn't with a sponsor and wasn't working steps. I come in here and tell you one thing, then I go outside the door and do whatever the hell I wanted. You know, just blow some smoke in here to try to make myself look good. And the truth is, I was only hurting myself when I did that stuff, you know. But I was denying myself this opportunity that is so free in here, you know. Nobody's ever asked me for anything in here. Who's given me. This is like the once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. This is the one time in life where somebody's offering me the winning lottery ticket. And I don't have to buy it. I don't have to give up anything except for paying to get it off of them. You know, I just have to do what you say. And that is, it's hard to do sometimes. Because like I said, man, I'm a good addict, man. I think I know best a lot of times. And I've been proven wrong a lot of times. You know, just got to stay open-minded to it and be able to see it. This is the one time in my life where by doing what somebody else tells me, I feel I have everything to gain and nothing to lose. You know, and if it can work for a hard-headed and stubborn bastard like me, man, I think it could probably work for just about anybody. At least that's the way I feel. I guess I take that back. I did have one thing to lose just for today. I lost the desire to use drugs through this process. And that's a miracle because I thought that day would never come. How much more time do I have? You ain't got to hold the sign up for me, man.
5 minutes, man.
5 minutes? Holy shit.
Or
You cut short. You want to keep going?
You're done.
Yeah, that's I don't know, man. It's all I really have on that subject. So thank you for letting me share.
Thanks, Jack. Yeah, so we circle up like around these three tables and close with the unity ties. Thanks, Jim. Now it's time to introduce the first speaker. This man plays a huge part in my life, and I stay in contact with him every day. And I give you Jim T from Hugs Not Drugs with the topic of Welcome to NA.
My name's Jim, and I am an addict. I don't know if I like this thing or not. Will it still record if I set it down? Okay. Let's turn it off. Outstanding. All right, my name's Jim. I'm an addict. You guys can all hear me okay? All right, good. A couple things real quick. I only have I think Phil told me you have 20 minutes, so I can only give you a real small window into what it was like, how I got here, and what my recovery is like today. First of all, let me say a little disclaimer. I didn't look this good when I first got clean. Phil remembers. I was a 118-pound terrorist. Really, I was mean, low, backstabbing. I'd smile to your face and steal out of your pocket while I was doing it. I'm grateful that I don't have to live like that today. Another thing, is this the original room that's always been in? You guys have always had it here? So I was sitting over there earlier, and I haven't been here in probably 10 years, and I was sitting back there. I was in shock, and because I felt like this room was a closet to me, and I remember it being this big, giant, huge hall. So my perspective has changed. So if you're new and you're shaking like I was when I got here the first couple of years, I shook for a couple of years, emotionally, physically, and so if you feel like you're in a big hall and you're back there shaking, it's all right. Just stay in your seat. We'll hang on to you and make sure you don't fall out of that chair. So I think it's important for the newcomer and for the person that's been around here for a long time and still feels like a newcomer that you hear what brought me here, and I just had this sick feeling my entire life as a child because I never felt like I belonged anywhere and I never felt like I fit in. My dad was a special forces soldier, and he was gone all the time. And my mother was really overprotective and a loving and caring woman. She should be nominated for sainthood for putting up with all of our crap. She raised 4 boys on her own. And then my dad would come home from leave, and those guys believed that you worked hard and you partied hard. And when they came home, they partied hard. And so that's what I saw, these two extremes. And I learned about manipulation and violence at an early age. And I didn't know how to process that because I never had any spiritual and emotional connection on a heart-to-heart level with the man. I never had that until I got clean. And so when I picked up the drugs, it was the solution to my problem at the time. And I'm not sure that I would have been able to function in society had I not had that little bit of cushion for my emotions. I'm still a wreck. Somebody else was up here telling me earlier, this guy back here saying he had 12 years, he's still a mess. I'm still a mess too. I've been around here for a while, I'm still a mess. But this using gave me this little bit of reprieve from the angst that I felt internally. And I never understood what that was or where it came from, or the big thing, why me? I used to ask that all the time. Why me? Why me? Why me? And today I ask how instead of why. It just gives me a different perspective if I take something in my life, and instead of asking why did this happen to me, I ask, how do I work this? How do I get through this without hurting me today? So when I picked up, man, it was like a magical thing. I don't know about anybody else's experience, but like I like to use. I mean, I enjoyed it for a while until that shit turned on me, and then I didn't have a choice anymore. I'm not sure when that happened. I know for probably about the last 10 years of using, I used against my will, and I had to have that explained to me because I didn't know what powerlessness was when I got here. And somebody asked me, they said, well, have you ever used all night until the damn birds started chirping in the morning and started freaking out and told yourself you're going to never do that ever again, or sitting in a jail cell fighting over a roll of toilet paper for a pillow, telling yourself you're never going to do that again, and get up the next day and do that shit all over again? Well, they told me like that's like using against your will. I was like, wow, I did that for a while, decade or so, and so I could buy into that. See, I was a firm believer that I knew everything before I got here, and it was I don't know if it was a spiritual awakening or a rude awakening, probably both, when I realized that I didn't really know shit. I didn't really know shit. When I came to Narcotics Anonymous, I didn't know the first thing on how to live life without the use of drugs. And there's a reason this first page in the basic text is blank. If you've never seen it, it's blank. So that's how, when I get up in the morning, that's how I try to approach my day. It's like a clean slate. I ask a loving power greater than myself to come in my life and guide me and try to keep me from being the destructive force that I was before I got here. And when I got here, I was wearing the same motorcycle jacket that I had been wearing for the previous 15 years. It had blood and piss, and it's probably still got a nice coating of chemicals on it, and it didn't smell very good. And I thought I looked good. I thought if I got in the shower and put on my leather, my boots, and I was rocking and rolling. And I look back on that now, I was like, what the hell was I thinking? It's just mind-boggling, like the distortion that the disease does to an addict. A completely distorted human being. And I was also sitting back there thinking about, because some of you guys were up here talking about family. My family always used to tell me that I would never make it to 18 and never make it to 25, and because that's the way I used. I mean, I was a terrorist, a complete terrorist, and a lot of my family are still in shock at the miracle that I just celebrated a 44th birthday. Holy smokes, 44! I was a maniac out there, and it truly is a miracle that I'm standing here clean today with a bunch of years clean. It's mind-boggling, and a lot of my family are still in shock, and because of the work I've done in my recovery, a lot of my family members have been able to apply some spirituality to their life. It's just a blessing. I can either be a destructive force on the people I love or a positive force on the people I love, and I choose the latter today. This thing that brought me here, G-O-D, the gift of desperation, that's what brought me here. It says, I love the literature, man. I mean, that's why I love Phil so much, Brother Phil, because he's like a literature freak, and I love this stuff, man. I love the literature. It never gives it to me wrong. It gives it to me the way I need it every time I pick it up. Wherever my spirit's at that day, if I pick up the literature, man, it just fills my spirit. Because after I realized that I internalized the first step, I had this giant vacuum right here in the middle of my chest, and I needed to fill it with something. And I needed to fill it with a power greater than myself, and it started out with you guys, and I'm grateful that I still have a room full of you guys that I can turn to when I feel that vacuum inside. So I'll read this real quick out of the book, and then I'll stop with the literature. It says, we came to Narcotics Anonymous as a result of the wreckage of our past. The last thing we expected was an awakening of the spirit. We just wanted to stop hurting. Like that's my story. This whole book is my story. Every time I read it, I was like, holy shit, man, somebody's following me around. That's the tweaker in me. somebody else said they were into meth. So like that's still feel like some people are following me. This desperation, man. I've had, I've done the geographical cure. I've been able to like stop using and get clean and fix the relationships and get the new job and start all this stuff again because I have a really, really powerful, strong self-will, and I'm able to do that stuff. I can put something down and get it picked up, and the lifestyle has always drawn me back. The lifestyle will get you. Oh yeah, it'll get you. You can stay abstinent, but the lifestyle will get you, and this is the cure for the lifestyle right here. The 12 steps in Narcotics Anonymous. I got here terrified, man. I was terrified that I was going to go back out. I was going to leave my seat here, and I was going to go back out there, and I was going to use again. Terrified, and I'm still terrified, man. I'm shaking. Literally, I'm physically shaking because I'm terrified if I go back out there and I take one, because I know what happens to me when I put one in me. There's no leading up to this becoming a monster. It happens like instantly. As soon as I put one in me, man, I become just a terrible, terrible human being. All that spirit in me that I feel so good today just drains from me, and I become willing to cash all that stuff in. We were talking about like what we're willing to do for a bag on the way up, and you probably don't want to hear that at the podium. I don't know. Like it also says in this book about the stuff we were willing to do. Listen, man, I did all that stuff. Jails, dirty needles, prostitution, all that shit. I've done all that stuff. So, like, you're not alone if you did all that shit too. It says in our literature that, like, the more beaten we are, the more willing we become. And I'm just grateful that there was this power greater than myself out there working on my behalf, carrying me long enough until I found Narcotics Anonymous. Because jails, institutions, and death didn't work for me. I experienced all that stuff around me in my life before I got here, and it wasn't enough for me to like want to change from the inside. I got here, and thank God for my predecessors that allowed me to get in my seat and stay here. Like if you're new here, just stay here. I don't have any more time to share the rest of my story, but I love Narcotics Anonymous, and if you want to know more, get my number. We'll share. Love you guys. Thank you.
All right.
Thanks, Ken. All right, the next topic is Spiritual Principles of Unity with Larry S. from Freedom at Last in McKeesport.
Hi, I'm Larry. I'm a recovering addict.
Larry.
Love Narcotics Anonymous, man, because like my clean date is August 20th, 1993. I don't say the clean date for the brag, but for one reason they told me if you don't remember your clean date, you might be trying to get another clean date. And I'm also saying my clean date is because I got to remain teachable no matter how much time I got in this fellowship. Of course, I've been here 24 years. I worked on all 12 steps a couple times. But I didn't pay that much attention to the 12 traditions. And I got this book, Guiding Principles, the Spirit of Our Traditions. And I started reading it, and it talks about our predecessor, Alcoholics Anonymous. Then it also talks about other groups that had the same thing as like something anonymous, just like Narcotics Anonymous. And most of the other groups have fell to the wayside because they didn't have traditions to bind them. I looked at the banner when I was sitting over there. Unity changes us, as well it should. Because when we come together, the man, this topic made me break out a dictionary and everything else. And because I'm a firm believer in not giving anybody any misinformation. You know, when you give a topic like this, you got to give them what comes out of the book, more or less. You don't get to put your own self into it later on until you tie yourself into how you work your unity process. But the definition of unity is the state of being united or joined as a whole, or a unified group or body. I got that straight from Webster. But when we come in Narcotics Anonymous, we get the jargon we use brings on a whole new meaning. It brings on a whole new meaning. There's words that before I got here, if I were to use them in any other context, they wouldn't have meant the same. You know, like powerlessness, you know. And what I found out by reading this book is that the steps in the tradition feed each other. Okay? You can't work. It's just like, okay, where they talk about in the first step about powerlessness and unmanageability. If we only admit our powerlessness, then we only start to know half the truth. So if we only work the steps, then we're only working half of our program. It talks about in the second step, some of us passed over this step with a minimum of concern. I see that going on sometime in the meetings when I sit there and people read the readings, and when they get to the 12 traditions, a lot of people don't think they're so important, so they might start a little conversation off to the side. You know? But the traditions is what keeps Narcotics Anonymous together, especially that first tradition, because it says our common welfare. That means our common welfare is like the well-being of Narcotics Anonymous. We're all here to make sure Narcotics Anonymous survives. That's what we're here for, because that's why we carry the message to the addict that still suffers. Okay? Man, I'm telling you, Phil, man, this awakened another part of my spirit. It's awakening another part of my spirit to say, I got to learn more about my traditions. And hopefully after I'm done speaking about that, especially the first tradition, our common welfare should come first. Personal recovery depends on NA unity. That unity I'm talking about could be as simple as smiling when a newcomer comes to the door, giving them a hug, showing them where the coffee is, help setting up meetings, help tear down meetings. All of that has to do with unity. Service work. Service work is a big part of Narcotics Anonymous. For me, in the beginning, it was hospitals and institutions. That's where I was like, I found my little niche that I could do and serve in Narcotics Anonymous, because I always enjoyed helping the newcomer. I always enjoyed like reaching out. Because I can remember, man, when I first came around here, they reached out to me. They reached out, they gave me a hug, they talked about like welcome home. You know, in the reading, the last sentence it says, it's only through understanding and application that these traditions work. Okay? A lot of us, if we ain't doing the reading and we ain't broadening our horizons in recovery, we're not really understanding. So if you don't understand something, how are you going to apply it? Okay? And I have to say it again. 12 steps, 12 traditions. They feed off each other. I don't know. I've been through a lot in this last couple of years. In recovery, I've been through 2 knee replacements. One of them just 3 weeks ago. And my support group, they reach out to me. They reach out to me. They were like, okay, are you all right? They call me on a daily basis. Are you all right? That's unity, man. That's unity. That's tradition stuff. You know what I mean? That's 12 tradition stuff. That's 12-step work. All of that. It's all like one big ball of wax, man, all tied together, man. And long as we keep doing that, man, we can survive in Narcotics Anonymous. Narcotics Anonymous is like, I know you've heard it said, it's like the greatest show on earth. I can remember, I think it was like the 7th one, maybe. You look. I take my glasses off to read all the time. The 7th, practicing these principles. Okay. Practicing these principles. Phil in the group, and I'd like to thank Men in Recovery group for putting this on every year, because this is like one of the best things that we can have in Narcotics Anonymous. And Phil handed out the sheets that had all the spiritual principles on. They handed them out. And there were so many. There were so many spiritual principles. And if you look in your step working guide and read at the end where it says spiritual principles, and it says we practice these spiritual principles for this step, these spiritual principles for this step. I typed all that stuff out. I got that in my book, but I'm not going to read that to you. I got 5 minutes left. But I got like 3 minutes left because Phil showed me the sign 2 minutes ago. But all of those principles, and then when I found out that I didn't really have to talk about every last one of them, but there are more principles when you start getting into traditions. There's even more. You know what I mean? And I challenge you guys to get your literature, read your literature, work your steps and your traditions. Thanks for allowing me to share. I'm an addict named Larry.